Hey everybody, what's going on? Jim here, and welcome to the Jim Filoni vlog. Bit of an update. Yesterday I kind of trauma dumped a little bit yesterday, and the individuals that I was talking about, the main individual I was talking about, saw the video, and they weren't too thrilled about it, but it's still an issue, um, and it's still something that bothers me immensely, and it's going to continue to bother me immensely. Um, but yeah, so that was an interesting evening. I was already asleep by the time they saw it, and I woke up to a bunch of text messages, but you know it's whatever. If you want to know about what I'm talking about, just watch the previous vlog. But today, I figured I'd talk a little about something positive, because that's what I mainly want to do on this channel, is talk about positive things. And the first positive thing is, hey, check it out. I got a microphone and I got a mount for the car. So yeah, it's all real cool now in here, so I can have a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? A little bit more production value for my sitting in a car vlog before I go into work. Today, I wanted to talk about something near and dear to my heart, and that is, ironically, I have a copy with me, Godzilla. And I just kind of want to talk about how interesting it is. I'm going to take the seatbelt off. I am parked. Oh no, the car will probably go ding, ding, ding if I take it off, because I still have it running. But I wanted to talk about Godzilla a little bit today, and how interesting it is, the modern era we live in which Godzilla is a popular IP, and it's cool to like it now. And just my perspective growing up in the 90s and the 2000s, where that was not the case. And I always find it hilarious when nerd things, stuff that you would have gotten ridiculed for years earlier, instantly becomes part of the zeitgeist. And Godzilla is a perfect example of that. So Godzilla has been a franchise that's been around since 1954. A very, very long, historic franchise, and probably one of the most important movie franchises to come out of the land of the rising sun. And the original Godzilla film was a very strong metaphor for the nuclear bomb and the horrors that it produces. And it is one of my favorite films of all time, and it's definitely my favorite black and white movie. Now, granted, I haven't seen a whole lot of black and white movies. I've seen my fair share, but I definitely think, when it comes, especially to that early era of like special effects movies, and like black and white science fiction movies, it's definitely the best one. It has a haunting impact, especially the original Japanese version. And then it kind of got butchered when it came into America, but it's still a fun movie. The original 1956 Godzilla King of the Monsters, where they splice in footage of Raymond Burr into the movie. And, it's fun for its own reasons, but the American version really is just a monster movie. It doesn't have like an underlying message, or, about nuclear bombs and whatnot, and nuclear weapons. And it's also just, it's an interesting film because, it's an allegory for that, based on people that were actually affected by the nuclear bomb. So it's just a very interesting, film to watch and engage with. And it's one of my favorite films of all time. And the franchise continued, onward. There was Godzilla Raids Again, which, funnily enough, the American version of that contains one of the first roles of a young George Takei from Star Trek. I don't believe he was actually in the movie. I think he just did like some of the dubbing for the film. It was, he did dubbing for the film of one of the characters, which is cool. And then, of course, we had King Kong versus Godzilla, and then Mothra versus Godzilla, or Godzilla versus the Thing when it came over to the States, and so on, and so on, and so on. And then the franchise eventually went into hiatus when this movie came out, Godzilla, Terror of Mechagodzilla, which was the sequel to Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. And this came out in 1975. And that was the last Godzilla movie for 10 years. 9 years, really. And then in 1984, Godzilla 1984 came out. And then when it came to America, it got butchered again. And Raymond Burr was spliced into it, along with a lot of Dr. Pepper. And then the Heisei series began. So we had the Showa series, which was 1954 to 1975. And then we have the Heisei series, which starts with Godzilla 1984 and then ends with Godzilla vs. Destoroyah, which I believe was 1998 or 1997. And then we have I think it was 1997 actually. 96 or 97. I think it was 97. And then you had the TriStar American Godzilla from Sony and TriStar Pictures. From the guys that made Independence Day. And that movie, it's a bad Godzilla movie. It's a fun monster movie, but it had no business being a Godzilla movie. It has some of the elements that make Godzilla, but overall it was more so just a juiced up Jurassic Park, a Lost World in Jurassic Park, San Francisco sequence, than it was a true monster movie. And by the end of it, it just becomes like a raptor chase sequence from Jurassic Park. It's got some fun elements to it, and I do think maybe it's a little bit overhated. I know I did my fair share of hating on it in the past. But like I said, as a fun monster movie, it's all right, but it's just not a good Godzilla movie. And then we got the Millennium series, because that movie didn't do so well. Toho decided they were going to make more movies to kind of save their franchise. So they did Godzilla 2000, and then it went all the way to 2004 with Godzilla Final Wars. And then that was it for a long time. That was the 50th anniversary, I believe. And then for a long time, we got nothing. There was rumors of, a Godzilla 3D movie coming, Godzilla Takes IMAX or whatever, and nothing really came about it. But then it finally came out that Legendary was picking up the IP, and they were going to be doing a movie on it, and we just didn't really see anything for a long time. As someone who was growing up during that era, I remember first hearing about Godzilla 3D. I think I first started hearing about it in 2007 or 2008, and then I think it was 2007 because I was in middle school, and then we didn't get anything until 2014 with Legendary's Godzilla, and that's when kind of the revival started happening. That's when you started seeing a lot more interest in Godzilla. The American films were popular. They did really well. And then you had the Kong Skull Island, and then you had the Godzilla King of the Monsters, the American version, the American Legendary version, Godzilla King of the Monsters. And that movie is one of my favorite Godzilla films of all time, just because of the monster sequences. The human parts suck a lot. But what I got from it in the monster action sequence, that just makes it one of my favorite films of all time. Now, I'm not one of those people that say, Godzilla shouldn't have human people at all. It should. but I think they need to be better written. And a perfect example of that is Shin Godzilla and Godzilla Minus One. They were really great movies, and they're my favorite Japanese Godzilla movies. It was Shin Godzilla used to be number one, but now Minus One is number one, and then Shin Godzilla is number two. But I'm always really fascinated by the Shin Godzilla, that version of the character, and I hope we see more of it in the future. Because that film was just crazy. Some people might find it boring because there's a lot of human political stuff in it, but it's an allegory for what actually happened in Japan once again, with the typhoon and just the disasters that were going on around that time, and natural disasters and how the government handled it. And it was just insane, really really insane stuff to watch. And then Godzilla Minus One was just a return to form. I mean, it's the first Godzilla movie to win an Oscar, for visual effects. And the new one's coming out, Godzilla Minus Zero, and I'm very excited for that. I didn't mean to break down the entire Godzilla filmography, but I think it was good for context. So if you were born in the 80s, for example, you didn't really get a whole lot. If you were growing up in the 80s and you were a Godzilla fan, you really didn't get a lot. Now, you did get the benefit of the movies playing on TV quite a bit, but it wasn't something where Godzilla was ever really popular. And a lot of that has to do... There's an infamous screening of Godzilla vs. Megalon, which is one of the more infamous Godzilla movies, and it was hosted by some comedian at the time. I think it was on USA or Sci-Fi or whatever, and he was just ripping on the film the whole time. And then, of course, it was featured on Mystery Science Theater 3000. So the especially the Showa era Godzilla films were really considered a joke. And if you were into them, you were a loser, essentially. The same way where if you were into Star Trek, you were a loser. If you were into Star Wars, you were a little bit less of a loser because Star Wars is so ingrained in the popular culture. But if you were a big fan of it, if you knew who I don't know, Max Rebo is, then you're a big loser. Or Salacious Crumb, if you can point out what character that is, you were a loser. I first watched Godzilla. My first recollection of seeing Godzilla was the American 1984 film, Godzilla 1985, is what it was called here in the States when it got butchered and Raymond Burr was added. And I was enamored with it because, I knew of giant monsters thanks to Riptar from Rugrats, but I didn't know that there was I didn't know that Riptar was based on anything. And so when I saw that, I was just enamored with it. And then I learned about the other movies, and every time I'd go to the library, I'd find Godzilla films, so I'd rent those on VHS. And, especially in the 2000s, I had a GameCube growing up, and I discovered Godzilla Destroy All Monsters Melee, and that game was just phenomenal. I loved that game so much. And then there was Godzilla Unleashed on PS2 and Xbox, which was also amazing. And it was just a cool era to be a Godzilla fan, because then also TriStar was releasing English dubs of the Heisei era films, which didn't really get dubbed over and released in theaters over here. So they got dubbed by TriStar and released over here in the States, and you would get them peppered throughout time and whatnot. And then they did the same thing with the Millennium series. And it was just a cool time. It was a cool time, whenever you discover another Godzilla movie that you hadn't seen just dropped, and you'd go to the video store or the library or whatever, or on the rare occasion you'd go to Walmart and they'd have the 2-pack, Godzilla versus Space Godzilla, Godzilla versus Destroya, and I was like, oh yes, take that. But yeah, it was just an interesting time, a really interesting time. And I I always was a big Godzilla fan, and it was so hard to get stuff of Godzilla back then. And I just feel I feel happy for the kids today that are into Godzilla through the legendary movies and the new movies that are coming out from Japan, like Shin Godzilla and Godzilla minus one and minus zero. I'm really happy that they get to experience this. That I'm glad that merchandise is being made readily available here in the United States, and it's just cool to see. It's just really cool to see, and I'm very excited for Godzilla minus zero. I kind of squealed to myself a little bit when I watched it the first time. I had to be kind of quiet though, because my girlfriend was she was napping, so it was just a excited kind of thing. um, but yeah, it was quite a thing, and I'm very very happy that kids today get to experience Godzilla and enjoy Godzilla in a way that I didn't get to. But now it's kind of ironic because the films that I grew up watching and loving, they're kind of hard to come by nowadays, like the Heisei era and the Millennium era, just because the rights are kind of like all over the place. You can get them like digitally streaming here and there in a couple different places. Like I think Fandango at Home, formerly Vudu, has some for sale. And I think I bought a couple on sale on Movies Anywhere, which is an app that Disney owns. And they were the English dubs, thankfully. But yeah, DVDs are really, really hard to come by now. I think a lot of that has to do because Godzilla is so popular now, especially with kids, that it's there's a scarce supply. There's a scarce supply, and if I ever have kids, they're going to be a Godzilla fan and a Star Wars fan and a Star Trek fan. I will teach them in the ways of the nerd, if that ever happens. But yeah, that does it for me. A little bit of a more positive vlog today. I felt a lot better getting what I said yesterday off my chest, and it I promise not to trauma dump that much. Here on this channel, I want to talk about positive things, stay positive, and use this as a method to just talk and share and whatnot. But it was really really bothering me yesterday. It was bothering me a lot the day before yesterday, and I just had to get it off my chest. And it's just easier to sit and talk to myself. And I wasn't really intending for them to see the video, but somehow they did, which I don't really care if they saw it or not, because that's my truth, and that's my perspective. And yeah, but what do you guys think of Godzilla? Let me know down below. Are you excited for Godzilla minus zero? What did you think of the other Godzilla films? What's your favorite Godzilla film? Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, I am Jim Filoni, and I will see you in the next one.